Do you remember the time that you fell in love? And even more specifically, the time you fell in love with coffee? I do. I remember. And I remember being a little girl, and one moment. I had to get that in there. I remember being a little girl and watching my grandmother sit at the kitchen table and drink her coffee. The older I got, the more I thought, I think my grandmother thought she was a British woman. Because when I tell you, my grandmother would drink coffee with an actual coffee cup and a saucer. When I tell you, I thought that was so amazing, so elegant. Like, I had no concept of those words at the time because I was too little. But I thought it was fancy. I thought it was pretty. So that's the best way that I could really describe what I thought I saw. I saw pretty. And I thought it was so pretty, the cup. I thought it was so pretty, the saucer. And the way that my grandmother drank her coffee was absolutely amazing to me. And I wanted to take part in it. So every morning that I would see my grandmother drinking coffee, I would beg. I mean, y'all, I would beg. I would like, please, Grandma, let me have some coffee. Please, Grandma. And this is what she would say. Gal, you don't need no coffee. Coffee will make you black. And I always remember looking, I was like, well, Grandma, I'm already black. And she would laugh, and eventually she would allow me to sit down. And so you have to understand, when my grandmother drank coffee, this was her setup. Again, she had the coffee cup, she had a saucer, and she had a piece of bread. Now, her piece of bread was always cut in half. So whenever I would beg and finally be able to take part, my grandmother would get me a saucer. I never got a cup. She would only get me a saucer, and she would take her coffee, pour the actual coffee into my saucer, and then she would take a piece of her bread and cut it in half. So I get a fourth of her bread. She would put that bread over to the side, and together we would dip it in the coffee. We would dip white bread in the coffee and eat it, and I thought it was the most delicious thing ever. So fast forward, I'm grown, and now I am living in Japan. And this is the first time that I'm really, partaking as an adult, drinking coffee. And I just kept saying, I can't drink this coffee. I can't do it. I don't know what's wrong. It was entirely too strong. So my Japanese senseis would always say, American coffee, baby coffee. And I was like, what? I didn't understand what that meant. Why is American coffee baby coffee, right? So it eventually, while I was living and working in Japan, I would always do half and half. So half hot water, half coffee. And I could somewhat drink the coffee. It wasn't great, but I could drink it. And so I eventually fell in love with iced coffee in Japan. So I got back to America, and we didn't have iced coffee in the 90s. That wasn't a thing. So I would try my best to duplicate this iced coffee that I fell in love with in Japan. So now, this is the second time I've fallen in love with coffee. The first time I fell in love with coffee was with my grandmother. The second time I fell in love with coffee was when I lived in Japan, and it was iced coffee. And now that I've returned back to the States, I'm trying to replicate this, and I can't. I can't replicate it. Every time I would try to make this iced coffee, it was a fail. So I came home one time because, I've lived away more than I lived at home at this point. So I was home visiting, and I was just explaining to my cousin. I said, I thought I liked coffee. I really did. And I said, anytime I come home, when Aunt Betty Lou, I don't even know why I said that, because that is not what we call her. We call her Aunt Betty Lou. Aunt Betty Lou. Aunt Betty Lou would always call me because she knew I loved coffee, right? So she would always call me and she would say, I got some coffee on. So I would leave my mama's house to go visit and talk to my Aunt Betty Lou. And while we were there, a lot of times, we would just sit and enjoy the coffee. Sometimes we talk about everything and sometimes we talk about my mama. But we always enjoyed this coffee together. Now, I'm not going to lie. I did not enjoy this coffee with my Aunt Betty Lou. But I enjoyed our practice. I enjoyed our ritual. I enjoyed our time together. So I would always go and sit with her every morning that I was home. I would go to her house and have a cup of coffee with her until I would leave and go back to whatever state I was living in at that point. So I'm explaining to my cousin that now that, Aunt Betty is gone and Grandma is gone, I really miss drinking coffee like that. And for the first time, I had to admit, I don't really think I enjoy drinking coffee. And my cousin was like, you don't? I'm like, no, I do it, but I don't really enjoy it. And the only time I can remember truly enjoying and loving coffee was, again, when I lived in Japan and I fell in love with iced coffee. But I started to explain to her the story I just told you about my grandmother. And she said, oh, well, I know why you don't like coffee. And I said, why? She said, because Grandma did not drink anything but instant coffee. I was like, what? Like, this is how much I was not a coffee connoisseur. I didn't even understand like instant coffee. I thought all coffee was percolated in a coffee machine. And she said, no, there is instant coffee. And she started giving me, I think the name brand was Folgers to be exact. She enjoyed Folgers instant coffee. She said, I promise you, if you start drinking instant coffee, you're going to remember how the coffee tasted at Grandma's. I could not wait to get to the store and find this instant coffee, Folgers to be exact. So I get to the store, I find my instant coffee, I go home, I cannot wait to make it. Like, all I got to do is add hot water and cream and I'm good. Baby, I added that hot water to that instant coffee. I added my cream and instantly I fell back in love with coffee. And I only drink instant coffee to this day. Years later, I only drink instant coffee. I just wanted to share that quick story time of how I fell in love with coffee and how my grandmother was absolutely the instrument that allowed me to fall in love with this beautiful morning beverage every day. Again, I thought she was a British woman as I got older and realized how she always had her cup, she always had her saucer, and she always had a piece of bread that she could dip in there. And I'm not gonna lie, y'all, did I try dipping white bread in my coffee as I got older? Absolutely. I did the whole ritual and I almost threw up. And I never tried dipping white bread in my coffee again. I don't know why I loved it as a child, but I was a child. As a grown adult woman, I will never dip white bread in my instant coffee. But I tried, y'all. I wanted to recreate that whole feeling. But I still must say, I love coffee. I don't think I'll ever not love coffee. But more specifically, I love instant coffee and I love the memories that I have each time I drink them. This is Vita with Life Her Way. Y'all have a good one. Bye, y'all.